A World War II Navy fighter was recovered from the deep on Friday in an historic joint enterprise between the Navy and Lockheed's Deep Quest. The Kogo News team, made up of reporter Ron Swag and cameraman Tom Keck and Lee Lewis, was on the scene from the beginning of its operation to its successful conclusion.
.4,800 feet of cable was attached to the F-6F fighter by the Lockheed Deep Submersible Deep Quest. A special deep-sea hoist aboard the Navy's floating dry dock, White Sands, is used to make the lift from the depth. The procedure for the operation is to lift the plane to 50 feet, have it inspected by explosive demolition team divers, attach a large 6-inch line to the craft, sling it underneath the White Sands, and then attach it to a heavy crane for lifting into the ship. Lieutenant Commander Malcolm Bartels, officer in charge of the lift, explained what ordnance might be present on the plane.
Possibility that it still has ammunition from the old days still on it. It does have machine guns, and we're expecting perhaps 30 caliber, 50 caliber machine gun shells in the wings, and there could quite possibly be bombs slung underneath.
Shortly after divers had made their inspection and attached the heavy line, trouble developed. The small line, which had brought the plane 3,250 feet, parted from the surging action beside the ship. A second small line was attached just in time, for with a pop and a roar, the large 6-inch line parted and fell in the water. The crew paid out the line until the plane was at 400 feet again, and the lift was resumed. While the deep-sea rig hauled the Hellcat close to the surface again, I talked to Larry Shoemaker, pilot of Lockheed's Deep Quest, and asked him how he had attached the line to the plane.
Yesterday we went down and the plane sitting perfectly flat on the sea floor with two panels missing right in the front where the lift points are, which made it very easy. We went down, we passed two wire straps through the engine mountings, attached them to the 5,000 feet of line we were carrying on Deep Quest, and ascended to the surface, unreeling the line. Once we're on the surface, we handed the line over to the Navy, and this is it going on the drum right now.
Finally, the plane was moved to the after part of the White Sands, and divers entered the water to attach a cable from the heavy crane. Maneuvering lines were also attached to the plane while the floating dry dock began the process of sinking itself to a predetermined depth so that its stern gate could be lowered and the plane brought into the dry dock. Divers were necessary to monitor the attitude of the plane so that it wouldn't be damaged getting into the well of the dry dock. Seamen hauled on lines. Bosun Murphy signaled the heavy crane to delicately move the plane into position so the gate could be closed and the well pumped dry. There was only 1 foot of clearance on each side of the wingtip. The crew of the White Sands had been working without sleep for almost 40 hours straight. Their lift began at 11 p.m. the previous night, and now at the close of day was almost completed. They had overcome some bad luck, the parting of 3 lines, and the nervous strain of doing something there was no manual for, something never done before. Finally, the plane was high and dry in the well of the White Sands. While the well was being pumped dry, the ship received a message that the pilot of the plane was an ensign named Robert F. Thomas of Fighter Squadron 21, who had ditched on January the 12th, 1944, during an air tactics flight, and that he'd been rescued by a destroyer. To the crew of the White Sands, from the skipper, Lieutenant Myers, to Bosun Murphy, to Quartermaster 3rd Gary Morris in the maneuvering room, they had pulled off another first, the salvage of a plane from 3,300 feet from the ocean floor. No one knows all the scientific information that will be realized because of this recovery, but even when the plane is restored and resting in San Diego's Aerospace Museum, the whole combined effort of Lockheed and the U.S. Navy can only merit an old Navy accolade, well done. Ron Sweg, Channel 10 News.